Hello everyone, Colton Dean here, Dean for 19. Just wanted to talk a little bit about my ideas for transitioning from a minimum wage to a housing wage. So if you recall, the fight for 15 began 10 years ago when a number of fast food workers walked off the job in New York and demanded that they get $15 an hour, which I totally support workers' rights to strike, to unionize, to collectively bargain for better pay and benefits. Unfortunately, the fight for 15 has only gained minimal traction in the last decade. A few states and a few municipalities have passed a $15 an hour minimum wage, but the same issue of the minimum wage not keeping up with inflation still remains, and it's becoming more prevalent recently with current inflation and gas prices. So I wanted to just talk about a little, and I apologize for being a little Ross Perot here, but I've got some visual graphs here. So here in Albuquerque, the minimum wage is $11.50 an hour. Now, what that comes to when you multiply by 160 hours in a work month is a gross pay of $1,840. And off the top, taxes are going to be taken off, about 30%. So that leaves a take-home pay of $1,288. According to rentcafe.com, the average rent in Albuquerque is $1,170. So if you look at my little pie here, you got 30% of your taxes right there, and 63% of your gross pay going for the average rent. Now, of course, some apartments are cheaper, some apartments are more expensive, but this just shows that if you're working minimum wage and you're working full time, how much of your salary is going to rent, leaving you 6.5% for your food, your gas, your insurance, utilities, clothing, childcare, car maintenance, savings, entertainment, if there's anything left for anything else. So this is pretty much where we're at. Now, other parts of the country have it worse because their minimum wage might be about the same, might be a little bit more, but their cost of living is much more. You probably have people who have to pay more just to, you have people who, rent rooms within houses, or multiple people living in rooms together trying to get by. And this is also detrimental to people who have fallen on hard times, who are currently unhoused. If we provide the support to get them off the street, to treat any addiction or mental health issues they have, then they go out into the world and they get a job, and now they're struggling to stay in a house, in a home, in an apartment, wherever, So if we increased the minimum wage to $15 an hour here in Albuquerque, sure, yeah, we'd go up a little bit. Have your 30% taxes taken off the top. 49% of your gross pay would go to the average rent. And you'd have 21% of your gross pay left over for food, insurance, clothing, childcare, gas, etc. That's pretty good, a little bit better, but still, we're at 49% of your gross pay going to your rent. That doesn't leave much wiggle room for emergencies, or if they decide to raise the rent suddenly, or if inflation starts expanding here, there's not much wiggle room. So my idea is to tie the minimum wage to the average cost of an apartment. You know, that will take the political fight out of the minimum wage and keep the minimum wage so that anyone who works full-time can afford dignified housing. And this is how that would look in Albuquerque. In Albuquerque, with the average rent being $11.70 a month, what we would do is we multiply that by 3. So the minimum wage should be 3 times the average rent. So we multiply that, that comes to a gross pay of $3,510 per month. We subtract 30% of taxes, that's $1,053. That leaves 33% to go towards your rent. And that leaves 37% of your gross pay for clothes, food, gasoline, childcare, insurance, emergencies, savings. Imagine that, saving money for whatever. And then if we tie this to housing, you know, say every year we do a survey of the average cost of apartments in, say, the city of Albuquerque, the county of Bernalillo, the state of New Mexico, and we say this is what the average housing is, therefore the minimum wage should be, and it automatically adjusts. Then it takes the political fight out of this. Then we're not spinning our wheels for 10 years with Fight for 15. We don't have to start talking about Fight for 25 in another 10 years or Fight for 30 in 10 years after that. It just automatically adjusts. And it preserves the housing first model, making sure that anyone who works full-time will afford dignified housing. That would mean that the minimum wage in Albuquerque should be $21.94 an hour to afford this. Now, of course, we can't do this overnight. This would have to be phased in so that it's not a shock to local businesses. My idea for that would be to phase it in with the bigger businesses first. You start with your big box stores that can afford to pay more but choose not to. This would also benefit people who may work multiple jobs. So say you have a facility that won't schedule you full-time. You know, you'll work 20 hours here and 10 hours at this other job and maybe 10 hours at one other job every other week or something. Everyone has a different situation. Then as long as you can get to that 40 hours a week, you will have enough for dignified housing and enough to save for a car, a home, an emergency, whatever you need. Plus, with my idea, we're generating more tax revenue so we can fund our schools, we can invest in solar and wind and battery storage, we can maybe someday have universal health care. And then with more extra income that people have, they can go shop at local businesses. And then those businesses will have more business. And those businesses will be able to afford to pay their employees more, etc., and so forth. And then when people say, you know, the minimum wage isn't enough, then they can say, well, it's tied to housing. And it's no longer a right versus left political battle. So, if you like this idea, if you believe in housing first, and you believe in a living housing wage, please visit deanfor19.com. Please encourage your friends in House District 19 to vote Dean for 19. Today is Friday. Today and tomorrow are the last 2 days for early voting. After that, it's Tuesday, June 7th. Hope to have your support. Thank you.